Greetings, one and all. Thanks for tuning in. I had a little request about talking more about the Kundabuffer in the Gurdjieff work, which can at times be quite confusing because he discusses how we were given this back in the early days of humanity when the planet was first being created. And well, we didn't have it originally. Earth was being created, and then the angels and archangels suddenly realized something was wrong with the way the planet, our Earth, worked with the rest of the cosmos. It wasn't in harmony. So to distract us humans from seeing what was going on, the cosmic repairs, let's say, they gave us a Kundabuffer, which was like a towel out of the bottom of our spine where the coccyx bone is. It sprung out from there, towel. All very weird, isn't it? And it kind of deluded us as to what was really going on. Gurdjieff says it made us see things upside down, but it gave us a way of enjoying life in an imaginary way, in a deluded way. But it kept us distracted from what this cosmic workings, repairs were going on. And when they fixed it all, they took it away from us. But we were so programmed by that Kundabuffer, us humans, that we still continued to live in that way as if we still had a Kundabuffer, even though we didn't know it'd been taken off us. We were programmed to live that kind of way and forgot our mission, our reasoning for being on planet Earth. So I found in All and Everything, this is in the Russia chapter, he's talking about Kundabuffer. And he obviously is talking to his grandson. And he's saying the difference only in this, that in former centuries, the division into different castes proceeded from the consciousness and intention of several separate individuals there. So, you know, certain individuals managed to take hold of the reasoning of humanity, take hold of governance, and somehow put across that we needed to be separated into different castes, you know, of what we were worthy of, or whether we were really poor people, we were lower class, and if we're really rich, then we're the elite and should be looked up to. And, you know, then there's this middle class, that middle management type of thing. And then there's the working class to keep everything working. And then, of course, there's other castes in other countries, you know, like we have the Indian caste system and things like that. You know, he's saying this was spreading throughout the world in different ways. Well, now this proceeds quite automatically without the participation of anyone's will or anyone's consciousness. So it's still going on now. Sadly, we still divide things into castes. We still have racism. We still have, you know, let's say homophobia and things like that. People are still not recognizing that everyone's a human being, everyone's individual, and that, you know, there should be one love for all. People are still judging people for being a certain way. You know, there's people that are against gingerhead people. There's people against, well, there's people against everything, against everyone. The war against all, that some would say. That's a bit of Steiner there. But anyway, carrying on. Now, my boy, I find it opportune to explain to you a little about this. Namely, in what way and in what gradations these favourites of yours become automatically sorted out from their different celebrated castes, and how they later already began to subdivide themselves into these castes. And I do notice some people, and I myself was like this, we're put into that caste and we believe that's it, that's how we are. We can't improve ourselves, we can't better ourselves, we can't go up the ladder. Well, we can on an esoteric path. You can always go up that ladder. You're developing yourself and improving yourself every day. In the material world or the secular world, where they want to keep us in our caste so they can keep us all divided, it's a bit more difficult to break them barriers, a bit more difficult to break through that glass ceiling, as they say in the business world. So continuing with Beelzebub. When, according to various chance circumstances, and wherever significant groups of them became concentrated and they exist together, then several of them, in whom firstly for some reason or other, the consequences of the properties of the organ Kundabuffer had been previously well crystallized, the totality of which crystallizations in general gives to their common presences the impulses for what is called cunning. And secondly, in whose hands at the given time there appear for some reason or other many different, what are called terrifying means, or what they themselves call weapons, quickly set themselves apart from other beings and putting themselves at their head constitute the beginnings of what are called the ruling class. And let's face it, most of us are dominated by people with weapons, or by being cunning, pretending that they're doing the best for us, when really they're just doing the best for themselves, manipulating people so that their lives are made easier. But putting across to them people that they're doing it for the good of everyone, of course, and for the good of you. And we can see all that's still going on a bit now. This is why we need to develop those spiritual eyes and ears so that we can see through these things. And many of us can, and then it makes it more difficult to live in this world, because we can see that it's all the lunatic asylum that Gurdjieff has been telling us that we're living in all along. But we shouldn't despair. Instead, we should be using that information to help us with our own development. We can see through that, what that's happening. We can see through that conspiracy theory, or we can see that conspiracy theory is actually coming true, and we use it to our advantage. In that, okay, so we know that we're kind of on the right path, but at the same time, it makes us aware of we don't want to be caught up in that materialism or that secular way of thinking. We don't want to be angered by it. We want to be aware of it. We need to be impartial to it. We need to be aware as to why this is going on. What is making this happen? And normally it is because of what Gurdjieff just said. These people that are manipulating and using their sly cunning to develop weapons to take control of us. They're scared of people like us. They're worried about people like us. You know, if there's too many of us, we could throw them out. Though, you know, some other tyranny might get in charge. But for our own development, okay, it's painful to see that the world is not what we're told it is when we're children and we wake up and see what's really going on. But it also makes us more aware of our own development in this material secular world, and our development of working with his endlessness, the divine source, you know, the spiritual soulful path that we're trying to continue on. And Beelzebub says, and further, since all the free-brain beings of the planet Earth, and particularly of recent periods, the sacred being impulse called conscience does not take part in the functioning of their general consciousness, in consequence of which in them there is absent even the very need for making any conscious being effort at all, then they, that is the beings who had set themselves apart and who assigned themselves to the ruling class, profiting by the said terrifying means, compel other beings of the given groupings to produce for them even those efforts which every being should inevitably actualize in ordinary being existence. So these elite, these people that are in charge, that aren't doing it for the benefit of everyone, but just for themselves, you know, they're not following their conscience. I've talked a lot about our conscience. We need to be listening to our conscience, using our conscience. We need to send them, I say, thought forms out for them to awaken to their conscience. They might still ignore it, but then again, it might niggle enough at them to make them suddenly realize that what they're doing is wrong. And they might start following the right way of thinking. I'm a strong believer in vibrations going out into the world, strong believer in that what we do affects others. And I hope that that's how you feel as well, that, you know, we don't want to go and kill these elites. We don't want to go and have them assassinated. That's no good. That's still on our karma then. We need to help them to awaken to their conscience. I've often said to people, it's morality before politics, and awaken to conscience. And most of these people have no morals that Gurdjieff's talking about here. And that filters down into the masses then, because they see their elite being like that. And if they are aware that they're being led astray and such like, then they start being like that in their own lives as well. And then that has a fallout throughout, I was going to say the masses again, then throughout, you know, the general public. But if we can set an example, and then they can set an example to the elite, maybe the elite will start either take a step down or awaken to their conscience and want to change. You know, there's nothing wrong with changing for the better, obviously. You know, in fact, that we should commend people like that, that can see where their faults and that they want to do it for the betterment of themselves and everybody else and the divine source. So, you know, it's for ourselves, for them, and it's for on high. And Gurdjieff goes on, and other beings of these groupings, also not wishing for the same reasons personally to produce these being efforts, no, not even for others, and at the same time being afraid of the mentioned terrifying means of the beings of the ruling class, began to have recourse to all kinds of cunning in order that, as is said there, to load on one another's backs such being efforts as are inevitably required for the beings of the ruling class. You know, and the ruling class, they do use brute force and ignorance. They do use weaponry, threats against us. And as we've seen from the last few years, not everybody believes in their threats or their ways. Obviously, the sheep did, and a lot of people did follow that kind of way. Many people didn't. And I've noticed over the definitely the last year or so, a lot of people that did follow what was being told to us in the years of 2020, that did follow through terror, through the fear that was put into them. And then have seen that, how do I put this? Let's say it was a scam or whatever. So more, in some ways, it was a bit of an awakening across the board for many people. This tyranny that were held sway on us woke a lot of people up. But that can be frightening for the elite, because suddenly you know, we've had in the past revolutions where kings and governments have been pulled out of their buildings and beheaded. Revolutions go on still today, but most of our mainstream keeps quite quiet about it. Mainstream media, I mean, keep quite quiet about it. Thank God we had the social medias to let us know that we are there for our brothers and sisters that are sticking up for themselves and an awakening to conscience for all the corrupt people that rule over them, who don't give an inkling for the lesser man and lesser woman. In fact, I would recommend highly William Reich's book about that. I did do an audio version of it on YouTube. And now the name of the title of the book has slipped my mind. I had it on my tongue just then, and then it went. Listen, Little Man. Very good book to read. And as I say, I have it on YouTube if you want to listen to it. And William Reich died in unusual circumstances and had a lot of propaganda, shall we say, said about him by the ruling elites. But he was a man for the people. He could see that it was unfair how we were all being treated, and everybody was being treated. And it's all because of this caste system. And as a result, the beings of every such grouping usually sort themselves out gradually and fall into diverse categories according to the degree of skill of their artfulness. And so, from the division of the beings into categories of this kind, there just begins in the following generations a subdivision and an assigning of each other into these famous castes of theirs. From this assigning of each other into castes of diverse kinds, there is already by itself infallibly crystallized in the common presence of each of them in relation to the beings who belong to all other castes, that being data, which is called hate. Just that data which was never in any other beings in the whole of our great universe, and which in its turn continually engenders in the common presence of everyone those impulses shameful for the free brain beings, which they themselves call envy, jealousy, adultery, and many other similar impulses. And that is very true. What I've just was saying before I continued the quote was that when there is a kind of a revolution or a calling to justice or awakening to conscience to our elites that treat us wrongly, they deny that shameful force. They don't like to be shamed. And they will try and turn it round. Spin it, I believe, is the word they use in politics. But really, this is what it all comes down to, the shameful force that they're feeling and they're embarrassed about, and they don't want to be caught out by it. So they find sly and cunning ways to get around it. We must not be fooled, peoples. We must go forward in love and light and awakening to conscience, morality before politics. And let us all help influence this world to make it a better place for one and all, and that we're all the same. No hangings of the elite, no hangings of those that have done us wrong. Instead, we need to help them to find their conscience. So from my conscience to your conscience, thank you for watching. Till next time, peace as always and love to all.